Commander High Park was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency signal tore through the quiet hum of Research Station Alpha 7. The red lights started flashing, and the automated voice began its urgent announcement. High nearly dropped his mug as he rushed to the communications center. The transmission was broken and filled with static. But the terror in the alien voice was crystal clear. Words came through in fragments under attack. Unknown ships. They're killing everyone. High's translator worked overtime, piecing together the desperate message from Kepler-4 to be a peaceful, mixed-species colony 3 systems away. "Sir, we're getting visual data now," said Technician Min-Su, his young face pale as he stared at his screen. The images were horrifying. Massive dark ships hung over the colony world like hungry vultures, as bright flashes lit up the planets. Surface as cities burned. Transport ships tried to escape but were cut down by precise energy beams. High felt his stomach turn. 50,000 beings lived on that colony. Humans, Altarians, Centauri settlers, even some of the peaceful vegan traders. Families, children, all of them trapped while something methodically destroyed their world. "Get me the Galactic Alliance." Emergency Council High ordered, but even as he said it, he knew what they would tell him. The nearest Alliance fleet was stationed at Proxima Base, almost 3 weeks away at maximum warp. By then, there would be nothing left to save. The Council's response came within the hour. Delivered by a nervous Altarian diplomat whose translator made his voice sound tinny and artificial. "Commander Park, we understand the gravity of the situation. However, our response fleets are engaged in other sectors. We were hoping your research facility might provide some assistance until proper help arrives." High almost laughed. Assistance. His station had 30 people, mostly scientists, and engineers studying deep space phenomena. They had 1 small transport ship and a handful of maintenance drones. What could they possibly do against whatever was tearing apart Kepler-4 for to be? "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Ji-Wan, holding up her headset with shaking hands. "Signals from the colony, they're getting weaker. I think most of their cities are gone now." The weight of 50,000 lives pressed down on High's shoulders. He looked around at his small crew, good people who had signed up to study stars and nebulae, not to fight wars, but they were only ones close enough to help. It's the only ones who could reach the colony before everyone died. High walked to his command chair and sat down heavily. On the main screen, the last few transmissions from Kepler-4 to be flickered weakly. A human child's voice cut through the static, crying for her parents. An elderly Centauri's final words to his grandchildren. The desperate plea of a vegan mother hiding with her babies. "Ji-Wan," High said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "Get me access to the Emergency Protocols database. Authorization code Omega-77. Ji-Wan's eyes widened. "Sir, those protocols haven't been used in over 100 years. "I know," High replied, reaching for the small red key he wore around his neck. "But 50,000 people are about to die, and we're the only ones who can do something about it." Hands trembled as he inserted the red key into the ancient console buried deep in the station's core. The panel hadn't been touched in over a century, covered in dust, and forgotten by most of humanity. But High remembered the stories his grandfather told him about the old days, when humans first reached for the stars and learned they weren't alone in a friendly universe. "Are you sure about this, Commander?" asked Engineer Taemin, watching nervously. As High's fingers hovered over the activation switch, "The protocols say this beacon is only for species-level threats." High looked at the screen showing Kepler-4 for 2B's dying transmissions. Another city had gone dark in the last 10 minutes. 50,000 people are dying, and we're 3 researchers with a transport ship. If this isn't the time, then when is? He pressed the button. The beacon's activation sent a pulse through subspace that traveled faster than light itself. It was a simple message, coded in frequencies only human systems would recognize. But its meaning was profound. Humanity's children were in danger, and the species was being called to war. On Mars. RETIRED, Admiral Jin Woo was tending to his garden when his old service communicator began screaming. He'd kept the device as a memento, never expecting to hear its emergency tone again. The small screen displayed activation codes he hadn't seen in 40 years, codes that meant the unthinkable had happened. Impossible, Jinwoo whispered, dropping his watering can. Arthritis forgotten, he ran to his basement where his old command terminal waited under a dusty cover. His fingers, still nimble despite his age, danced across the keys as he verified the codes. Real. All of it was real. Across the solar system, automated systems that had slept for generations suddenly woke up. Deep in the asteroid belt, massive mining stations revealed their true purpose as weapon platforms rotated toward jump points. On Europa, ice miners received new orders and began powering up ships that looked nothing like civilian vessels. The Terran defense network had been designed by paranoid humans who remembered Earth's violent history. While other species built for peace and exploration, humans had quietly prepared for the day when peace wouldn't be enough. Every colony, every mining station, every research facility had a secondary purpose that the galaxy had never suspected. Lieutenant Donghae watched from Luna Base as his screen filled with green lights. Ships he'd thought were permanently mothballed began their startup sequences. Crews who'd been living normal civilian lives received activation orders and reported 2 vessels they'd never expected to see operational again. "Sir," Donghae called to his commanding officer, "we're reading massive power signatures throughout the system. It's like everything's coming online at once." Captain Young-sik nodded grimly. He'd hoped this day would never come, but he'd trained for it his entire career. "Send word to all station commanders. Operation Shepherd's Call is now active. Humanity is going to war." The sleeping giant was waking up, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when their children were threatened. "Captain." Nally stood on the bridge of the flagship Determination as hundreds of ships appeared around her. What had started as empty space near Jupiter was now filled with vessels of every size and shape. Mining barges, research ships, cargo haulers, and passenger liners, all converging on the rally point like a massive family reunion. But something was different about these ships. "Captain, the freight hauler, Peaceful Venture is deploying weapon systems," reported Lieutenant Kyung-ho, his voice filled with disbelief. "Those cargo containers ... They're opening up to reveal missile launchers." "Nah," Lee smiled grimly, "and that's just the beginning. Watch the mining ship over there." The massive ore processor Golden Prosperity was transforming before their eyes. What had looked like simple mining equipment was folding back to reveal massive energy cannons. The ship's hull plates shifted and rearranged, showing armor plating that could withstand military-grade weapons. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Sujin. "How many of our ships are like this?" "All of them, nah," Lee replied. "Every human vessel built in the last century has a secondary configuration. We learned long ago that the galaxy can be a dangerous place." Across known space, alien intelligence networks were going crazy. Sensors that had monitored human space for decades were suddenly detecting energy signatures they'd never seen before. Ships that had been cataloged as harmless civilian vessels were now showing power readings that rivaled military dreadnoughts. On the Altarian monitoring station, Epsilon 9 Chief Analyst Vrextel stared at his displays in growing horror.
"This
cannot be correct," he muttered to his assistant. "These readings suggest the humans possess a fleet larger than the entire Galactic Alliance combined." "Sir," his assistant replied nervously, "our sensors are working perfectly. Those human research stations are powering up weapons that our own warships don't possess." Meanwhile, Captain Nali received reports from across the solar system. The agricultural station near Ceres had revealed itself as a massive weapons platform. The ice mining operation around Saturn's rings was actually a fleet depot containing hundreds of combat vessels. Even the small courier ships that delivered mail between colonies were equipped with military-grade shields and weapons. Jinwoo was requesting fleet status reports, announced Su Jin, her fingers dancing across her console. Na Li looked out at the growing armada. Ship after ship continued to arrive, each one shedding its peaceful disguise like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. These weren't explorers or traders, they were warriors who had been hiding in plain sight. Tell the Admiral we have over 300 vessels at this rally point alone, Nally ordered. And more are arriving every hour. The truth was finally revealed. Humanity hadn't been the galaxy's quiet neighbors focused on research and trade. They had been preparing. Every human settlement, every mining operation, every scientific expedition had been part of a vast defensive network, while other species had grown comfortable with peace. Humans had remembered the lessons of their violent homeworld. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Admiral Jin Woo's weathered face appeared on screens throughout the massive human fleet. His voice was calm, but every captain listening knew they were about to hear something that would change everything. The old admiral had fought in the border conflicts decades ago. Back when humanity first learned they weren't the only predators in the galaxy, captains, what you're about to hear is classified under the Terra Protection Act, Jinwoo began, his hands clasped behind his back. We call it Deathworld Doctrine, and it's the reason we're still alive as a species. Captain J. Min leaned forward on his bridge. He'd heard whispers about the doctrine in military academies, but never the full truth. Around him, his crew listened with growing amazement as the Admiral continued. Other species evolved on garden worlds, Jinwoo explained. Gentle planets, where cooperation meant survival. They build ships for exploration, for trade, for scientific discovery. But Earth tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Lieutenant Mihan, monitoring alien communications from her station, watched her screens fill with panicked messages. The Altarian High Command was demanding explanations. The Centauri Federation was calling emergency sessions. The Peaceful Vegan Collective was asking if they needed to evacuate their border colonies. Sir Mihan interrupted quietly. The Alliance is going crazy. They're detecting over 2,000 human vessels now, and they still don't understand. What they're seeing? Jin Woo nodded. Let them panic. Need to understand what we really are. He turned back to address the fleet. Every human ship, no matter its stated purpose, is built for war. Our research vessels can outgun most alien battleships. Our cargo haulers carry enough firepower to level cities. Why? Because we learned on Earth that the universe doesn't care about your intentions. It only respects your ability to survive. Captain Bo Ram, commanding a former passenger liner now bristling with weapon systems, felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral, are you saying we've been preparing for this our entire history? Not preparing, Captain. Adapting. Jinwoo's expression grew serious. Humans survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and predators that hunted. Us for sport. We learned that when something threatens your family, you don't negotiate. You eliminate the threat completely. Mihan's console began flashing with urgent messages. Admiral, I'm picking up communications from the attackers at Kepler 4 for 2b, they're calling themselves. The Devourers. And sir, they're not just attacking that one colony. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Show me. The main screen filled with a galactic map dotted with red markers. Dozens of systems under attack. Hundreds of thousands of lives at risk. The Devourers weren't raiding. They were harvesting entire worlds. There it is, Jinwoo said quietly. The threat we've been preparing for without even knowing it. Gentlemen, today we find out if Deathworld Doctrine works against something that's never faced a species like us. The storm was gathering, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what apex predators looked like when their children were threatened. Dr. Yu. Sun had been staring at the distress signal translations for hours, something nagging at the back of her mind. As the fleet's chief linguist, she'd worked with dozens of alien languages, but this transmission felt different. Wrong somehow. The grammar doesn't match, she muttered to herself. Pulling up the original audio files from Kepler 4 to B, her small linguistics lab aboard. The flagship was quiet except for the hum of computers analyzing alien speech patterns. She played the transmission again, focusing on a specific word the Alliance translators had marked as assistance. But as she broke down the frenetic structure, her blood ran cold. The word wasn't a request for help, it was a warning about something. Called the consumers, or Her hand shook as she checked the translation matrix again. The Devourers. "Oh no," Yusun whispered, reaching for her communicator. "Admiral Jinwoo, please report to linguistics immediately. We have a massive problem." Within minutes, the Admiral arrived with Captain Nally and several senior officers. Yusan's face was pale as she gestured to her screens filled with corrected translations. "Sir, the Alliance got it completely wrong," she began, her voice trembling. The colony wasn't asking for assistance. They were screaming a warning about something they recognized. Something that's been gone for so long that most species forgot it ever existed. Admiral Jinwoo leaned forward. "Explain." Yusun played. The corrected audio. The alien voices, once seeming desperate for rescue, now carried a different tone entirely. Pure terror mixed with ancient recognition. They're saying the Devourers have returned. They consume everything. "Run," warned the others. "Don't let them spread." Captain Ali felt her stomach drop. "Consume everything." "It gets worse," Yusun continued, pulling up historical data she'd found buried in the Alliance archives. I cross-referenced the term with old records. The Devourers appeared roughly 1,000 years ago. Entire sectors went dark. Not destroyed, but completely stripped of all organic matter. Planets left as bare rock. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't a military invasion or a territorial dispute. These creatures were harvesting living worlds like farmers collecting crops. According to the fragmentary records, Yusun went on, they would arrive at a system, establish some kind of processing operation, then systematically consume every form of organic life. Plants, animals, microorganisms, everything. Then they'd move to the next system. Admiral Jinwoo's jaw tightened. Why did they disappear? Nobody knows. The records just ... stop. Either they finished feeding and moved on to another galaxy, or something made them retreat. Looking at the real-time updates from Kepler 4:4 to B. But sir, they're not just attacking randomly. I've analyzed their movement patterns. They're targeting agricultural worlds, breeding colonies, anywhere with high concentrations of organic life. The Admiral understood immediately. These weren't conquerors, they were predators. And humanity, with its tendency to terraform worlds and spread life throughout the galaxy, had probably just painted a giant target on every human colony. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. Yusun checked her calculations one more time. Based on their consumption rate at Kepler 4:4 to B. Maybe. Days before they finished there and moved to the next target, the ancient nightmare had returned. Humanity was about to face something that fed on life itself. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately fell silent. Even the most experienced captains had never seen anything like what waited. For them at Kepler-4:4 to B, the planet was dying. Massive black ships, each the size of a city, hung in orbit like hungry spiders. But it wasn't the ships that made Admiral Jinwoo's blood run cold. It was what stretched between them and the planet's surface. Writhing tentacles of dark metal and pulsing organic matter reached down from the vessels, piercing the atmosphere like enormous feeding tubes. "My God," whispered Captain Na-Li from her position beside the Admiral. "What are those things doing?" Communications Officer Jun-Ho answered from his station, his voice barely controlled. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy transfers from the planet to those ships. They're draining something. Entire biosphere is being pulled up through those tubes." Admiral Jinwoo watched in horror as one of the feeding tentacles pulsed with green light, the color of chlorophyll, of grass and trees and all the plant life that had once covered the colony world. What? Another tentacle glowed red as it sucked up what could only be blood and organic matter. "Commander So Kim, prep all rescue shuttles," the Admiral ordered, forcing himself to focus on what they could save rather than what was already lost. Commander So Kim was already moving, a rescue team streaming toward the shuttle bay's teams. 1 through 5, focus on the southern continent. I'm still reading life signs in the mountain regions. Team 6 through 10, check the polar cities. Move fast, people. We don't know how long we have. But as the shuttles launched toward the dying world, something else caught Jinwoo's attention. The Devourer ships weren't just feeding, they were building. New structures grew from their hulls like metal tumors constructed from the very matter. They were consuming. The ships were getting larger, stronger, preparing for their next harvest. Admiral, called Tactical Officer Wanbin, I'm detecting smaller craft launching from the main vessels. They're heading for our shuttles. The rescue mission was about to become a battle, so Kim's voice crackled over the communications as her shuttle dove through the atmosphere. We've got survivors at the Harmony Valley settlement, but something's coming after us. Small ships, moving like nothing I've ever seen. Jinwoo watched the tactical display as dozens of sleek, organic-looking fighters swarmed toward the human rescue shuttles. These weren't machines in any sense he understood. They moved like living things, predators hunting prey. All fleet units, this is Admiral Jinwoo, he announced, across all channels. We are now in first contact with a hostile alien species. That poses an existential threat to all organic life. This is no longer a rescue mission. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Devourers. All ships, weapons free. Protect our people at all costs. The ancient nightmare had found them, and humanity was about to learn what it meant to fight for the survival of all life in the galaxy, Captain J. Moon watched the massive Devourers swarm approaching his battle group and felt something most species would call insanity, excitement, where other races would see impossible odds and retreat. Humans saw a puzzle to solve and prey to hunt. All ships, form hunting formation Delta 7, J. Moon commanded, his voice calm despite facing odds of 3-1. Remember, these things have been feeding on defenseless colonies for 1,000 years. They've never fought something that fights back. The human ships didn't retreat or form defensive lines like any sane military force would. Instead, they charged straight into the heart of the Devourer's swarm, breaking into small groups that moved like wolf packs stalking their prey. Crazy humans, muttered Observer Zekthar from his cloaked Altarian scout ship, watching the battle. Unfold, they should be calling for reinforcements, not diving into that death trap. But as the first human ships engaged the enemy, something unexpected happened. The Devourers, who had spent centuries consuming helpless worlds, suddenly found themselves facing creatures that had learned to hunt on a planet where everything tried to kill them, Captain. Yan Su led her destroyer group in a coordinated strike that would have made a pack of Earthwolves proud. Target their feeding tentacles first, she called to her squadron. Cut them off from their food source. The human ships moved in perfect synchronization, each one covering another's blind spots while they systematically destroyed the massive feeding tubes connecting the Devourer ships to the dying planet. When the aliens tried to surround one human vessel, 3 others would appear from unexpected angles, their weapons tearing into the attacker's flanks. Impossible, breathed Zekthar, as he watched a single human cruiser take on 5 Devourer vessels and somehow survive. The human ship was badly damaged, but it kept fighting, using debris and explosions as cover while picking off enemies one by one. Lieutenant Hoon-Ki, coordinating the battle from the flagship, couldn't help but grin as the reports came in. Sir, the enemy is breaking formation. They don't know how to handle our attack patterns. J. Moon nodded, understanding what his lieutenant meant. The Devourers fought like apex predators who had never faced real resistance. They expected their prey to run or cower. But humans had spent millions of years as both predator and prey, learning to fight with cunning and desperate courage. When cornered, signal all ships, J. Moon ordered. Phase 2. It's time to show them what happens when you threaten human children. The battle groups were formed, but this time they didn't just attack. They herded the Devourer ships like sheepdogs, controlling a flock. Every time the aliens tried to escape toward open space, human vessels appeared to cut them off, forcing them back toward the planet where the main fleet waited. The ancient enemy was learning a terrible lesson. They had awakened something that treated impossible odds not as a reason to surrender, but as a challenge to overcome through pure, stubborn human determination. The difference became clear within the first few minutes of combat. While other species in the galaxy built weapons meant to disable and capture, humans had learned a darker lesson on their violent homeworld. Sometimes you had to kill or be killed. Captain J. Moon, watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction as human plasma cannons tore through Devourer hull plating that had shrugged off Alliance weapons for centuries. Their armor is designed to resist energy weapons meant to stun, he told his weapons officer. But we never learned how to build non-lethal weapons. The Devourer ships, which had seemed invincible against other species, began breaking apart under the focused fire of weapons designed by a species that understood war. Human missiles didn't just damage, they hunted their targets with artificial intelligence that learned from each impact, adapting to enemy countermeasures in real time. "Sir, we've breached the hull of the lead vessel," reported communications. Officer G1. Major Han Sol is requesting permission to begin boarding operations. Jae-moon almost felt sorry for what was about to happen. "Almost, Major." Han Sol led his Marines through the torn hull of the massive Devourer ship, moving through corridors that pulsed like the inside of some giant creature. The air was thick and wrong, filled with the smell of digested worlds and consumed civilizations. "Stay tight, move fast," Han Sol whispered to his team as they advanced deeper into the alien vessel. "These things have been apex predators for 1,000 years. Time to show them what a real apex predator looks like." The first group of Devourer defenders they encountered moved like insects, coordinated but predictable. They had evolved to hunt helpless prey, not to fight something that fought back with intelligence and fury. Han Sol's Marines moved like a pack of earth tigers, silent, deadly, and absolutely merciless. Where the aliens expected fear, they found humans who had learned courage on a world where cowardice meant extinction. Where they expected confusion, they found soldiers who treated the maze-like ship as just another hostile environment to conquer. Their retreating called Sergeant Bo Young over the cum. "I've never seen anything like it. These creatures that have been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries are actually running from us." The truth was becoming clear throughout the battle. The Devourers had spent so long feeding on defenseless worlds that they had forgotten what real resistance looked like. They were like sharks encountering a pack of wolves, powerful in their element, but completely unprepared for something that fought with pack intelligence and desperate determination. "Major, we've reached their central processing core," reported Corporal Tijen. It's horrible, sir. They've got organic matter from dozens of worlds stored here. The ancient nightmare was finally meeting something it had never faced: humanity. It's unleashed and fighting for survival. The last Devourer ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its death scream echoing across subspace frequencies that would haunt alien nightmares for generations to come. Admiral Jinwoo stood on his bridge, watching the debris field that had once been an unstoppable force of cosmic destruction, and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: peace. "Fleet casualties, Admiral?" asked Captain Ellie, though. She already knew the answer would be far better than anyone had dared hope. 17 ships damaged, 3 destroyed, 843 casualties, Jin Woo replied. Against an enemy that had consumed entire sectors. He paused, looking at the tactical display. The Deathworld doctrine worked exactly as designed. Across the galaxy, the aftermath was creating shockwaves that would reshape interstellar politics. Forever, on the Altarian homeworld, High Council members sat in stunned silence as they reviewed battle recordings that showed human ships moving with a coordination and lethality that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. "They destroyed in 6 hours what we couldn't even slow down in 3 centuries, whispered Counselor Vexton, watching human Marines systematically clearing Devourer vessels with the efficiency of born killers. Commander So Kim finished loading the last group of survivors onto her rescue shuttles. 3,000 beings from a dozen different species, all that remained of Kepler-4 for 2B's 50,000 colonists. As her shuttles returned to the fleet, she received a message that made her smile for the first time in days. "Commander," came Lieutenant Minho's voice over the com. "We're receiving surrender transmissions from 17 other systems. The Devourers are retreating everywhere. Word of our victory is spreading faster than their ships can travel." Galaxy was learning a new truth. Humanity hadn't been the quiet neighbors everyone thought they were. While other species had built beautiful cities and peaceful societies, humans had been quietly preparing for the day when peace wouldn't be enough. Every human colony, every mining station, every research outpost had been part of a defensive network that spanned hundreds of light years. Admiral Jin Woo opened a channel to broadcast on all Alliance frequencies. His weathered face appeared on screens throughout known space, from the halls of power on Altair Prime to the trading posts on the Galactic Rim. "This is Admiral Jin Woo of the Terran Defense Fleet," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through victory, to all species of the Galactic Alliance. And to any others who might be listening, today you learned what humanity is capable of when our children are threatened. He paused, looking past the camera toward Earth's distant star. "For centuries, you saw us as primitive newcomers to the galactic community. You were wrong. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived by becoming the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." His expression softened slightly. "Today, we fought not just for human colonies, but for all life threatened by the Devourers. We succeeded because Earth remembers its children, all of them, human and alien alike." The transmission ended, but its message would echo through history. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.